お待たせをいたしました。本日はブロックチェーンの健全な発展と新しいビジネス創造のためにご参加をいただきまして誠にありがとうございます。それではこれより自由参加型セッション1、ブロックチェーンのさまざまな課題をあらゆる角度から考えるをテーマにアンカンファレンスを行ってまいります。このアンカンファレンスの進行はファシリテーターを務めをいただきますポタージュ代表コミュニティアクセラレーター川原あず様にお願いをいたします。では早速ですが川原様どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
はい、よろしくお願いいたします。こちらのセッションは今後英語で進行いたしますので、ご覧になっている皆様ご承知おきのほどよろしくお願いいたします。So now we are starting the Unconference session. My name is Ezi Kawahara, a facilitator of the session. Nice to meet you, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yeah, thank you, guys. Oh, great. So, BG2C have an unconference session today and tomorrow. And this is our first unconference session. And we will have great two discussions on two tracks. And we can enjoy this sharing knowledge and have a discussion and have a presentation. So we will have 1 hour, so please enjoy this session, all right? So I will share the screen. Okay, can you see the screen? Oh. All right, at first, please let me introduce myself. My name is Ezi Kawahara, a Community Accelerator of Potage. Actually, the Community Accelerator is a business which is accelerating the business activities of large corporations, communities, and startups as well. And I'm a facilitator as well, so this time I will have a facilitation of the session. So please enjoy this time. So this is the timetable of the conference. Now is the introduction time. We will have 10 minutes for that. Then we will have 40 minutes meeting discussion time. We have 2 themes today, and each session have its theme to discuss. And after the discussion, we will have a takeaway time, which has 3 minutes presentation for each theme. Totally 1 hour is our schedule. What is unconference? This is a participant-driven meetings with some stakeholders. So now we have special guests from all over the world who has a great knowledge and who have a great experience for the field and have a free discussion of each theme and have a presentation after that. This is the agenda of the conference. We have 2 tracks for each theme. Theme 1 is INATBA, Financial Discussing Digital Custody. This session will be on the live streaming at the venue. Theme 2 is the Financial Inclusion and Digital Identity. This session will be uploaded on YouTube later. Let me check the theme 1, INATBA, Financial Discussing Digital Custody. We will have special guests as participants, Mr. Junpei Miwa from Financial Service Agency of Japan, Mr. Arnab Naskar from INATBA, Mr. Glenn Wu from Ledger, and Mr. Yuji Suga from Internet Initiative. So this one will have some agenda like security of digital asset custody. What do you mean by digital custody? Best practice tips about appropriate key management and recommendations on implementation. Theme 2 is financial inclusion and digital identity. We will have great guests as well. Mr. Shigeya Suzuki, the project professor of Keio University, Mr. Naohiro Fujie, the staff of OpenID Foundation Japan, Mr. Nat Sakimura, the chairman of the board of OpenID Foundation, and Ninak Quenor, the chairman of Gun.com Ltd. This session will have these agendas. How can we implement digital identity compatible everywhere on the internet globally? OpenID Connect for identity assurance and identity proofing, digital identity-based banking, and how we can connect the digital money all over the world, and the future of policy for my number card in Japan. And this is an announcement for attendance. To audiences. You can watch live streaming of Theme 1 only on YouTube. We are sorry, but Theme 2 will be uploaded on YouTube later. So please looking for the uploading. So we will have a time for tech hours in 8:05. Please decide Please decide presenters while we are meetings. Each theme will have 1 or 2 presenters for the 3-minute presentation, okay? After the discussion, theme 1 and theme 2 will have a 3-minute presentation as tech hours. So please decide the presenters and please decide how you guys can present that theme and the discussion. Okay, so sorry. All right, so now is the time to move to discussion. So please start the discussion of the theme. Actually, on the screen, I can see the participants of theme 1. By 8:05, please have a free discussion of each theme. All right? Any questions, guys?
No thanks.
Okay, so please enjoy the discussion. Enjoy.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. This is program number 1, theme 1, June number 1 session. So this is the unconference session, a very open style of the discussion, as Kawahara-san mentioned. So I think we would like to make the outreaching session with the Inatoba, which is the one of the leading blockchain community, in European space, and of course we, based on the last, the discussion online BG2C session, so we have set out the new blockchain network, so we call it Begin. Blockchain Global Initiative Network. So this is the multi-stakeholder type of meeting venue, and so of course it's a very similar platform in European space. So Inatoba is one of the key platform in Europe. So I think my name is, firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Junpei Miura from the JFSA, which is the Japanese financial regulator. So we'd like to introduce the Arnav Naskar from Inatoba, chair of the Inatoba Finance Group. So I think start with the introduction of the brief introduction with Arnav, please.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Miwa. Can you hear everybody? My audio? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Arnab. I am currently based in Germany, precisely Hamburg. It's the north part of Germany. Inatoba was founded in 2018 by multi-stakeholders that include European Commission, various national blockchain companies, blockchain associations, big companies, payment groups like SEPA and others. So there's a lot of it's a multi-stakeholder association, and one of the most interesting aspect of Inatoba is it doesn't matter whether you're a small company or a big company, but your say in the association is quite loud. We have big companies like Deutsche Börse Group, and we also have the startups like my company Stocker, which is not that big. We also have Ledger, we also have Consensus, and it brings like on a discussion platform where we have big players and the new entrants, and to really bring the discussion to the regulators, like what is the industry risk and how we should tackle. And I am specifically responsible for the finance working group at INATBA. So INATBA has multiple working group. One of the working group is finance working group. And we are dealing with number of issues like custody issue, post-trade settlement of security tokens, stable coins, and so on and so forth. My background, and personally, I'm a lawyer coming from the legal side, currently based in Germany, working on security token issuance through my company. And I'm very much interested in the blockchain space from 2017, fully working into the ecosystem from 2018 onwards.
Okay, thanks. So please, the next one is a grandson from the INATBA. So grandson is Ledger. So please briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Miwa. So I'm Glenn. I'm currently based in Singapore, and this is my quarantine room in the background. I just landed in Singapore, and I have to serve my 14 days here. So I'm the head of Ledger for APAC, and just a brief introduction of Ledger. Ledger is a technology company. We provide blockchain endpoint security for individual institutions, where it's the theme of the topic today, institutional custody, and also for IoT, machines-to-machine communication. So maybe as we kind of jump into this discussion, I would just like to say a disclaimer about the digital asset custody space. So there are companies like us, Ledger, where we are the technology platform, and whichever companies that wants to get into the digital asset space, they can leverage technology players, which means that the user of the technology is the custodian, not the technology provider. But there's also other custodians that may have started with the blockchain journey, back 5 years to 10 years ago, and obviously they're very skilled in blockchain, and they know the market very well. So there are also custodians who are building their own technology to facilitate their custodian services as well. So I think it's important to make that distinction. And Ledger obviously is the custody technology players, where we are supplying our technology to various custodians globally.
Okay, thanks. So from Tokyo side, so there is one more key discussant, Suga-san. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm usually from one of the internet service provider, just like ISP, and also the cloud supplier in Japan actually. So my background is on the mathematics and also the cryptography. So recently that I'm interested in the DID and also the blockchain, which related to the cryptographic aspect. So I'd like to, and also that I'm a member, one of the members of the CGTF, Cryptographic Governance Task Force in Japan. So I'd like to introduce some kind of the governance aspect of the blockchain and also the blockchain custody, blockchain business side and also the custodians. Thank you.
Thanks. So okay, other than the kind of key discussant, we have also invited the other discussant here. So please introduce yourself, starting from the Oka-san. Oka-san there? Wasn't here? Nobuyuki-san? Oka-san? No? Or Miyazaki-san? No? And Alan? Alan joined?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay.
Alan, you said?
Yeah, Alan. Yes, please introduce yourselves.
This is my professor at the Oka University, but years ago, getting time professor no and now is emeritus professor. So and
okay, emeritus, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much. So yeah, that's a very fantastic background. So of course the next one thing. Sorry, you know, very a little bit confused. So next one, Alan Sam, please. From Coinbase.
Alan Leung, head of security for Coinbase Custody. We are a regulated custodian, regulated by NYDFS, and my background has been in multiple years in defense, finance, healthcare, and yeah, happy to be here. I'm based out of New York City.
Okay, thanks so much. So yeah, very late. Very late? No?
Early.
Early. Okay. Thanks so much for joining. So last one is Yukako-san from the BitGo. Do you join here?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Yukako from BitGo. We provide a custodian service based in South Dakota. We are regulated. And also we provide a wallet service in Japan. Very nice to meet you.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, let us start the, yes, I'm, coordinating the discussion. So, act as coordinating discussion. So, please start with the development in October, especially in light of digital custody. So, as Arnav mentioned, so there is, currently under the development phase of the digital custody. So, do you start with the, some explanation or presentation on the development of the digital custody in October?
Yeah, so I will just give a brief background about what currently we are doing at INADVA level for the custody solutions and where it comes from, right? In Europe, it's an interesting development that we saw last year that happened on the custody from a regulatory point of view. The European structure, there was for European structure, there are two kinds of laws. One is a law on the European level, and then there's a law on the national member states level. So there was a European directive that came out, it's a 5th AML KYC directive. Under that, there was an obligation being given to the wallet service providers, or you can call it crypto exchanges also, those hot wallets and crypto exchange kind of service providers, to follow the AML KYC structure in Europe. So it was a directive, and that gives a lot of independence to the national regulators like Germany, Luxembourg, French, and other players to adopt that directive and to bring it in their own national laws. And there we saw quite some divergent, like different national regulators try to interpret that structure and brought different, I would say, obligations for the custody service providers. Like, for example, and these service providers are treated as VASP, virtual asset service providers. I guess this terminology came from FATF structure. And this virtual asset service provider, for example, in Germany, they require to have a specific license. That means you have to apply to the German financial regulator like BaFin, and then you get a specific license to provide the custody service. Whereas we saw like countries like in Luxembourg, you don't have an obligation to receive a license, but what you have to do is register yourself with the regulators. So there are different divergent structure that we saw. And that's very interesting how the European market regulates. They structure it in two ways. One is a custodial wallet and one is a non-custodial wallets. Usually all the regulations are currently applicable for the custodian wallet, not the non-custodials. But yeah, there are some interpretation and things that are being discussed as there are a lot of divergence. And from the INADVA side, what we are trying to now analyze is what are the different regulatory structure in 29 member states in Europe currently, and how they are trying to regulate the custody, and how we can propose to do a harmonization. And why the harmonization, what is harmonization, is Europe is a small, I would say, ecosystem as a market, if we talk about crypto and others. If Germany, Luxembourg, France regulate separately, that will be very hard for small companies to grow. But if we have a regulation that is overarching and, uniformly applied to all the member states, that gives much more opportunity for the companies to grow and expand their ecosystem. And also for the users, they see a kind of standardization of approaches. This is something that we are trying to do, is to kind of analysis and propose some kind of a harmonized approach on this aspect, rather than going on a very national scale. Because one problem that we faced, and that's actually coming from members also, let's say you get licensed in Germany to provide custody service. That doesn't mean that you get the license to operate in Luxembourg or in France. That means that custody service provider has to license in every jurisdiction, which is not also scalable. So you need to have some kind of a passport, as we call it. Once you get a license, you can get it to passport it, which cannot be done without harmonization. So we are really trying to push that aspect. And also other aspect which we really came across while finding and while discussing is, like, for example, if you are in Luxembourg and you are a virtual asset service providers, you have an obligation to provide or to maintain the AML KYC of your users if you're a custodian. But there is no obligation that you require kind of an insurance. There is no obligation that you technically show how you're saving the user, I would say, fund and those kind of things. But such obligations we can see in Germany and in France. So there are different approaches, and we are trying to find a standardized way to how to put those approaches together.
So much. So, based on the explanation by our NAB, so do you have the other participant have a view on the kind of the currently, of course, the there is a gap in the jurisdiction base. So currently in October is a try to fill in the gap between the, especially in light of the obligation of custody service something. So as a participant, do you have any specific comment on these issues or? No?
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit from the technology side, especially the wallet management and the cybersecurity, which is very important to the regulation and licensing and so on and so forth. So we're in the view. I mean, just echoing what Arnab has said, in terms of having some kind of standardization across different jurisdictions. That's very important, right? So this blockchain is already very global, and if you have to spend the time and resources going from one jurisdiction to the other, that does not really help a lot in terms of making your business or making this industry truly global. So from a technology perspective, we are in the position where the regulators or the licensing scheme should not really include or dictate or define any kind of technology to be used, which means that, the technology, obviously, it's a very fast-moving market. So the wallet technology is evolving as we speak. So maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when everybody was talking about keeping their assets offline in like a bunker, now we've actually, developed a lot of new technologies where the assets could always be constantly moving. But at the same time, it offers as good of a security as an offline wallet. So, if if a certain jurisdiction mandates a certain technology to be used, it will not only hinder the development or the adoption of the newly kind of developed technology, but also it will make it very difficult to go from one jurisdiction to the other.
Okay, so I think the Wilson is good. So, do you have some comments on the adding to the explanation by the Grant? So, do you have any specific comments?
Actually, me and Grant work together, in Singapore to after the Apex market. I strongly agree with him that it needs some kind of a solution that will be able to work for all the different jurisdictions. That it is kind of global things, and, all the different parts that you have a different solution, and that's not very work in this kind of global environment.
Okay, so I see. Okay, so at this moment, so okay. Yes.
If I may add one thing, I think if I may add what Glenn mentioned, in Europe, there is a European regulator, it's called ESMA, that is European Securities Market Regulator, you can call it. ESMA has a very interesting approach in this kind of technology regarding regulation. This is the regulation should be technology agnostic, right? Because at the end of the day, when you say the cloud-based service provider suddenly change to decentralized service provider and it will change further, technology will evolve. But what fundamentally should come is how you are following the principles of investor protection, asset custody, and those kind of things. As long as principles are being followed and all these compliance processes are being followed, technology is an agnostic aspect, and the regulator does not want to highlight which kind of technology you are going. And that's, I think, a very interesting European approach, and this is something has been developed over the past, I would say, few years and decades from the ESMA level.
So much. So okay, yes. At this moment, so do you have other questions, or comments, or thoughts on the development of the Inatoba, European developments? Nothing. Okay, so I think it's, of course, we'd like to highlight more on the technical aspects. So digital custody, especially in light of the security perspective, and I think the in Inatoba. So do you have a specific kind of guideline and guidance on kind of security issues in the digital custody? So are you currently developing such kind of specific guidance or guideline in your community?
At this point of time, from Inatba level, we don't have that, I would say, proposal or any work structure on the exact technology infrastructure, or I would say the best practices for the industry. Because what is also our belief currently at the Inatba level is the industry is too early stage to go for any standardization in terms of tech. Because whatever you call a standardization right now has not been broken yet. So it's just a matter of time when it gets broken. So we want to have this kind of wait and watch approach. But what is a very interesting is every decentralized application somewhere is not fully decentralized unless you can talk about completely Bitcoin, which can somewhere is one of the best example of decentralized product. But a lot of these other services have a centralized component. What I think the European structure is trying to do is making that centralized component accountable, and they take the best practice decision what they want to implement, because technology is evolving. It's very hard to dictate which technology you want to use. So what is our current role is to provide a harmonized approach that all the best practices can be put on a harmonized approach. And then as the technology evolves, then you have the ISO standards and others will come into play that provides those guidelines, and then it will be adopted.
Because you mentioned something about the ISO or standardization process. How do you interact with the specifically interact with the such a kind of the process of standardization? So, for example, ISO or something. So, do you have specific kind of interaction with such a kind of standardization organization? Sorry.
Maybe.
Okay.
Sorry, Arnab. Did you want to take that, or?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, I don't believe there's any interaction that is going on with these global standard or any kind of cybersecurity agency in terms of getting a specific technology to go through any kind of certification. But I can maybe speak on behalf of the market where we see is that obviously of the past couple of weeks ago, the U.S. OCC has announced that any banks under their kind of jurisdiction can now become a digital asset service provider, and obviously a lot of the technology companies or the crypto or blockchain companies with any kind of security technology, they have to find a middle ground where they can pitch their new and very new, but working technology to the traditional audience. And obviously, traditional audiences like the banks would have their own standard that has been evolving over time. Maybe from 50 years ago, and obviously there is a movement to go through some kind of an assessment, whether it's ISO or whether it's SOC, to make sure that the existing technology, the existing traditional financial institutions that go by a certain technology can also well understand what this new technology represents as well. Okay. So from that perspective, I think each of the technology providers are, wherever their main jurisdiction is, it could be the ISO, it could be the SOC, and they're quite eager to go through the assessment and get themselves certified.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So, from Tokyo side, so Suga side, as Suga mentioned, you were actually a member of the crypto asset governance task force, right? So I think there's a specific development and issue, especially in the community development in the issue of the digital custody. Do you have any update on this area?
Yes. Unfortunately, our group has right now the new version of the some kind of guidelines, only within the Japanese. So that I'm direct to translate to the English. So and also some members has a connection to the TC307. It is one of the activities on the DLT and the blockchain in the ISO members. So I direct to we direct to the translated some kind of the further of the guideline in Japanese. So the pushing to the some guides via some guides to the TC307 community. And also the CDTF focus on the only in the regulation in the Japan. So I surprised that some regulations on the only the EU has very it is very different things for us to attachment. I'm sorry, address the localized regulation. So that this is brings that, and also that it's a big issue for us.
Okay, thanks so much. So, do you have any views up to now? So, I think the Yukako side is you're coming from the BitGo, so do you have any specific view on the current development of the digital custody or something?
I strongly believe we should follow three things to study how to save, like store the digital currency safety. First, I totally agree to what Glenn mentioned. We should follow always technology and security prospection. And then second, we should study financial knowledge also. And third, we should train our staffs, I mean the employees also, because we should the custody job is protect the client and people's asset. So yeah, I think these three things are pretty important.
Great.
Maybe I can just echo to what Yukako-san has just said. Obviously, cybersecurity, the prevention of the hack is very important. But there is an interesting article that I read from CyberTrace where they said back in 2018 there were a total of 1.74 billion in crypto that were stolen, and in 2018, 62% of the theft came from hacks. So these are cybersecurity issues. But in 2019, there were $4.5 billion of crypto that were stolen. But this time, less than 10% were from hacks. And about 90% or over 90% actually they were stolen through malicious insiders, scams, Ponzi schemes, and so on and so forth. So, I agree with what Yukako has said in terms of, educating the staffs, whatever capacity the virtual asset service providers are, operating, whether they're exchanges or providing third-party custodian services. It seems like governance is also a very big issue that needs to be enforced in the industry.
Okay, good point. So yes, very good point. So I think how do you see see the kind of the reaction to the Grant's comments? So I think more than 90% of the hacker incidents are based on the kind of insiders or some related problem there. So do you see specific views on this point by as a participants?
I will just add to what Glenn mentioned here. I think the governance is one point which is very much crucial in this kind of technology maintenance. And I would say to have a proper governance in the banking infrastructure also, right? You have a layer of governance. And somewhere I think there need to be a very interesting cross-border approach that different regulators must also take for the VAS. And it's how they cannot enforce a governance inside an organization, but what they can do, they can provide a best practice for the governance and different tier levels, what happens and when. And this not only will help, the companies to also manage their infrastructure and their security response team and those kind of things. But on the other side, this can be very useful for the insurance companies because they also see what kind of governance are standardized. And the insurance cost right now, I think Glenn and other people who are into this ecosystem, they know what is the pain for the insurance industry right now because it's very case-by-case basis. But if you really want the user to get the maximum protection in case of financial loss, insurance companies need to come in and they require a standardized approach. So the governance, if you can standardize to a certain level, I think that has a much more beneficial value addition than trying to standardize a technology right now. And this can also bring much more insurance companies into the market, reducing the effective cost for custody service providers and providing the value to the users at the end.
Okay, thanks. So I think the 10 minutes, we are running out of time, so time is running out. So we have currently 10 minutes or something. I think very good point. Everybody relates. So for example, of course there is jurisdictional gaps in the obligation of the custody services, and of course we try to fill in the gap in the activity of the multi-stakeholder participation to minimize such a gap. So of course and the security issues. So we are very much putting emphasis on the good interaction with the ISO or some standardized activities, but of course the based on the kind of the facts or statistics, so from the current hack incident, so the accident will happen based on the kind of internal kind of issues, or I think the very important for us to emphasize the governance issues for this, the management of the digital custody, and of course we should reflect the kind of the conventional wisdom from the financial institution, especially to keep safer management in custody services. So I think this is the discussion so far. So do you have as a point as a perspective on the issue of digital custody, or I think that we have to decide the kind of the presenter of the wrap-up session. So I think we would like to ask the guys to make a wrap-up session, to make a wrap-up comments on this. So, but we have still 10 minutes. So. Do you have any additional views? Yeah.
I guess one thing I would like to comment on is I think from a regulatory standpoint and from a governance standpoint, a lot of focus is on, or at least for the custodian, how we protect our private keys. But just as important is also the security of the networks that we integrate with, right? And having a standard of how do you assess a good secure network that you can support, protect private keys of versus a network that you cannot, even if you have absolute security of the private keys, right? And so the landscape is definitely changing in terms of the capabilities of networks and the purpose of networks. Think about staking, voting, right? All these kind of financial actions that you can take to integrate with the network, like that also needs to be looked at. And I do agree that it should be technology agnostic, but I do think that all areas should be part of the security risk framework when it comes to an assessment.
Okay, a very good point. So yeah, of course, yes, it's one of the important area, especially regarding the private key management. So of course, we currently have a blockchain global initiative network we call BGIN. So we are currently discussing the issue of the identity and the key management, especially highlighting the proper management of some seeking the solution for proper private key management or something. So yes, it's a very good point, to be considered, especially in coming period. So okay, yes, that's 6 minutes. So okay, so I think do you have other comments or other views on the issue of the digital currency or no? Okay, so I think for the wrap-up session, so I think the Arnab, could you ask you to make a wrap-up comment on the after 8:05? Yeah, maybe we step into the wrap-up sessions for brief presentation. So is it fine with you to
if everybody is fine, yeah, it will be my pleasure.
Yeah. Do you have any other guides, if
anybody
interested in that? Okay, Glenn?
No.
Glenn, would you like to go?
It's all yours.
Okay. So I think that's still 5 minutes or something. So okay, very great. We have very great discussion. So I think I want to ask the one question to the Inatuba side. So how we'd like to know the future plan of the community development, especially in the area of the digital custody. So do you escalate the kind of discussion in the community, or more seeking for the specific deliverables to the community size, so to the public domain? So do you have any plans for such a kind of
so currently, like this custody topic is one of the topics that the finance working group of Inadba is working on. There are some other topics also. But what we really see and what we are currently asking is our members and also those who are present here from the industry we request them to join INATBA if it suits your agenda. What we are trying to bring is all the pain points from the industry, try to find a common position from the industry as a whole, and then try to interact with the European regulators. Because what is our approach is this kind of approach should come from the Europe and not from the national regulators, because then a divergence can happen. So in order to avoid the divergence, what we're asking is the European regulators to step into the topic and really bring a collective discussion with the key stakeholders, because this market right now requires a lot of discussion, because it's a very early stage market. Because as you mentioned, these are not like old assets that you put in a bank custody and that doesn't interact. But as Alan mentioned here, this asset can be also used for staking. So that asset also has some kind of interaction in the ecosystem. And these are very new. This cannot be done with an old mindset and the old structure. So we need industry dialogues with all the best practices in mind. And I think the better the dialogue with the regulators, better it is, because you cannot close the dialogue over here and give them a license. But this should be a constant dialogue. That's what we are promoting.
Okay. Yes, very good points. So yeah, very fantastic viewpoints. So okay, so last 3 minutes. So there is a chance to make a last comment from the other guys. So yeah,
I think as this industry continues to grow, we should all be looking to share how we assess our risk within our organization. So I mean, obviously Coinbase, we've released a lot of different frameworks in terms of how do we assess an asset, how do we determine the risk profile of the specific assets, and the way we do it is all public, right? We've published it. We have Rosetta, how we determine to list an asset within the exchange, and so on and so forth. So I think the more we share, the more we all know, and it just helps.
Okay, good. Yeah, so sorry, I think the Alan is currently in the US?
That's correct.
Yeah. Do you have any specific development in the US or for the guidance of security or especially in light of the custody management?
It's getting a lot better. We work really closely with NYDFS, and I think in the next 6 months you'll probably see more and more regulatory authorities coming out with guidance like the OCC did. We're working hand in hand with them to just educate them on what we're doing, what these assets are, because they are evolving very quickly.
Okay, thanks so much. So I think the yes, almost no time rest, so it's a very precise session. Thank you so much. So okay, maybe move on to the wrap-up session. So I just wait for the minute. Okay, thanks.
Oh. Okay, guys, time is up. So probably the presenter of Central will come here. Coming already or not? How was the discussion? Actually, I watched in each thing, but I couldn't catch up so long time, so I can't understand the total overview, but I catch the passion and I can say that passion of you guys, and I make sure that you guys have a great discussion of time. Okay. Oh. Who came from Central, or probably the discussion was heated up? Okay, so I can wait a few minutes. Okay, so from team one, who's gonna be a presenter? Decided or just discussing?
For the custody, I think I will go forward with the summary for the custody discussion. Shall I start or shall I wait for?
Yeah, so, okay, let's go on. Let's have a discussion. So, Arnab will be a presenter, okay?
Yep.
Right, so you have 3 minutes for that, so
Perfect.
Sorry. All right, so please go on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we had a very interesting discussions for last few minutes with industry representatives from Ledger. We had industry representative from BitGo, from Coinbase Custody, and one of the very interesting key aspect, when discussing with Mr. Jampe Miwa was also there, Mr. Yugi was also there, that we all agree, and this is something what we can all agree on the discussion is the technology for custody solutions are evolving. So it's a moving target. And the regulators and all this, I would say both national regulators, if you talk about supranational like European regulators, must have a look into how the technology is developing, because the technology cannot be compared with the old custody solution like what the banks were using, but much more it's different because the asset class or the digital asset class like Bitcoin or Ether, they are very unique assets. And these assets requires not only safe custody, but also an interaction component. So as technology is moving, what we can see and what we agreed also on the discussion is there should be a technology agnostic aspect from the regulatory point of view. So when you're discussing about what kind of custody solution is best suited for the market, ideal solution right now is not to go for specifying which technology, but it should be much more on overall best practices, governance practices, and those kind of things with those principles. And I think there's the national regulators also need to collaborate. That means the Japanese regulators need to also have a discussion with the European regulators and the US regulators, because it's a cross-border market. It's an open internet-based market. And the national regulation, if it's too restricted and narrow, it may really kill the ecosystem and also not provide the best experience for the users to interact in the ecosystem. That's one key aspect. The other very interesting aspect that we saw is regulatory developments are coming quite interestingly right now in different jurisdictions. Like in New York, we heard from Alan, from Glenn is based in Singapore. He also mentioned how Ledger is working on the custody solutions from the regulatory point of view. And this regulatory movements we can see also from last year, a lot of after FATF guidelines, a lot of national regulators have tried to include how to regulate the custody. But we still see that there is a discussion level that the national regulators should talk. So that's something that we need to see in the coming days, a new regulation, how it comes and how harmonized it is from different national perspective. Overall, the other one key aspect is we also see is how to analyze the risks, because the risks are a key aspect of this kind of custody solutions, and risk can be managed by technology, by governance, by regulatory structures and those kind of things. And these risks need to be analyzed. Alan mentioned from the Coinbase side, they did quite some analysis on what kind of risks. So it's good to have a look into that and analyze the risk, and based on that, the regulation should go. Also, one key aspect Glenn mentioned right now is internally the current reports, which we saw all the assets have been lost, not because only of the hacking, but also for the lack of proper governance inside the companies that are managing the custody. So internal custody is also, governance is also required from a governance perspective.
Thank you, and great time management. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, so please welcome next presenter from SIM to Sakimura-san. You will be a presenter, right? Okay.
Mute.
Yep.
All right, can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
So we discussed about the relationship between digital identity and financial inclusion, talked about the pains of thin file people. The thin file people can be broadly categorized to those people who have immigrated to another country, and those people who are within their country but somewhat left out around. And unfortunately, we didn't get to the discussion about those on the later category, but we talked about the pains and what can be done to the former category, those people who's made a cross-border movement. And some of the requirements apparently was to be able to bring the data from their own country in the portable manner to a new country, which can be recognized by the local financial institutions. For that, we need to have a standardized, financial history or transaction history or something like that, in standardized format, which can be also attested or verified using cryptography. And then we also talked a little bit about the identification or recognition problems using potentially using cryptographic materials or SIM card or something like that. And one of the participants also argued that IPv6 can be a good medium for introduction of IPv6 can be a good opportunity to make the global identity, interoperable identity system, which I'm not sure, but certainly we can look at it. So that's a brief summary of our discussion.
Right,
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Sakimura-san. Please give him a round of applause, everybody. Thank you. Okay, so any question for presenters? Anybody? All right. I could see great discussion while we are discussing, and yeah, wrap up was so great. And maybe you can share the many perspective and point of views of the fields. So thank you for coming to great opportunity from all over the world. And actually tomorrow we will have a next conference from 9 a.m. in Tokyo. So if you are interested in, please join the session as well. All right, so everyone, please give everyone a round of applause for their participants. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you.
We thank all the participants in this session for lively discussion. 参加者の皆様ありがとうございました。ありがとうございます。そしてファシリテーターを務めをいただきました川原様もありがとうございました。ではこれをもちまして自由参加型セッション1ブロックチェーンのさまざまな課題をあらゆる角度から考えるアンカンファレンスは終了となります。これをもちまして本日のブロックチェーングローバルガバナンスカンファレンスフィンさんブロックチェーン&ビジネスホール B のすべてのセッションは終了となります。明日は9時よりホール A ではパネルディスカッションデジタル通貨によるオンチェーン決済の可能性、こちらのホール B ではアンカンファレンス自由参加型セッションの2ブロックチェーンのさまざまな課題をあらゆる角度から考えるをお届けいたします。明日のご来場およびオンラインでの視聴をお待ち申し上げております。本日はお忙しい中ご参加をいただきまして誠にありがとうございました。また明日お目にかかります。